The Doom series is one of the most revolutionary first-person shooters in the genre and gaming as a whole. Looking all the way back to 1993, which in turn put me at -4, Doom would release to a massive success and shake up the first-person genre gaming scene in general. After the success of the original Doom, it would spawn sequels and a great reinventing in 2016. The whole franchise is immediately recognizable and has maintained popularity for over 25 years now. While maintaining that popularity, how has the multiplayer held up? As one of the earliest franchises to even have a multiplayer mode, I think it's interesting to take a look back at some of the original roots of it and how Doom 2016 held up. Well, today we're going to be taking a look back at the main installments of Doom and see how their multiplayer has evolved and see if they're able to maintain a stable multiplayer player base. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to the YouTube user of Combine for giving me this recommendation. To me, it felt like a perfect game to cover that I just hadn't thought of, so again, huge shout out to Combine. Thank you very much for recommending this game, and let's just go ahead and jump into the Doom series and take a look at the multiplayer from the series as a whole. Doom 1993 released on MS-DOS by id Software. It was the second FPS game to be released by id after Wolfenstein. Doom would take massive changes to set itself apart from its previous World War II shooter though. Instead of being in Nazi Germany, you were on Mars. Instead of fighting World War II Germans, you're fighting demons from hell. It sounds over the top, but when you find out that Doom found most of its inspiration from movies like Aliens and Evil Dead, it kinda makes sense. The sci-fi shooter was wildly successful, selling over 10 million units and getting so many different re-releases, leading to more sales on each system, something Skyrim and Bethesda would shamelessly steal years later. With that being said, not every port was created equal. The Doom games on PC would offer two different types of multiplayer, co-op and deathmatch. Players could grab 3 friends at the time and play through the campaign together or go head to head in a deathmatch. For one of the first online FPS games, you shouldn't be too surprised to hear that the multiplayer was extremely bare bones. Deathmatch only supported up to 4 players and only had a handful of maps, and to be honest, I thought it was hard to find information about the original Doom's online play, but I just don't think there's much to it. Players would play as different colors of the Doom guy and earn points for every kill they got. The maps would still have guns and items to pick up like single player, but they would respawn, and health kits and better weapons would spawn in same locations and be hotspots for players to fight over. This style of gameplay would later be named as an arena shooter. I want to take a second to look at this absolute gem of a video on YouTube. This YouTube video is simply titled Doom Tournament 1996, and this is one of the biggest reasons why I love FPS games. And these are just the most normal looking dudes. No esports jerseys, probably no money on the line, just the one to be the best Doom player in your area. And I know there have been video game competitions since arcade cabinets, but seeing how much effort had to go into setting up this tournament was absolutely beautiful. Those large ass PCs and massive monitors all in the room with just everyone there just to play Doom, it's amazing. It truly hits different to watch now and is an absolute contrast to esports tournaments today that fill up these massive arenas. Doom's deathmatch would gain popularity but kick off a bit more with its sequel. With PCs just being a bit more common now and internet access being faster, Doom 2's online scene would get a huge bump in attention. I'm going to point you at another YouTube video and talk about it a little bit. It's by this channel called Alistair Roche. I probably fucked that up. But basically this channel goes on an in-depth replay from a match held on a LAN party in 1997. The website Doom2.net was hosted by a great Doom 2 player at the time named Badco. On this website you could find stats of deathmatch games, it would all be recorded, and player profiles would be updated all manually. Doom not only popularized the arena shooter game type, but also helped grow competitive gaming in general. I've said it before, but FPS competitive games are my favorite. I not only respect what Doom did for the SPF genre, but I also respect what those players did for competitive gaming in general. Doom wouldn't have another main release until Doom 3 in 2004. Doom 3 was a huge shakeup for the franchise. As FPS games were still largely popular, Doom 3 went for a more survival horror hook, and why not? Doom's setting and plot beyond fit a survival horror mold, as long as it's pulled back a bit. I have to say this before we go too much farther, but obviously a lot changed in the FPS genre as a whole from 1997 to 2004. These fast-paced FPS games were being more overshadowed by a slower-paced, story-driven experience. I'm also not saying that you can't have the original gameplay and also tell a great story, it's just it was toned back to focus more on the story in this instance. Slowing it down gave Doom a better chance to tell a story. Even though there are a lot of side characters that don't get much story before leaving the game, overall the game is just much slower. It takes a lot from the original and tries to build on it, mainly just the monsters and the company you work for, but overall it tries to build on the source while going into a different direction. The game even launched with a multiplayer experience that was similar to the original experiences in Doom 1 and 2. It really tried to keep that arena shooter feel but into a new era. And the formula was there, pretty tight maps fitted with health, ammo, and gun pickups. The classic game modes were there. There was just one big problem, and that's the game movement. For me, the game just felt a lot slower, even in the multiplayer aspect, making it hard to make it feel like a true arena shooter, fast-paced and chaotic. To me, the game looks like an arena shooter played at a snail's pace. Watching gameplay of it nowadays makes it look like it's in slow motion. It just kind of looks janky with the animations, and for an arena shooter, you want the game to be as smooth as possible. It's actually crazy to say that Doom 3 was actually the first Doom game I played from start to finish. It was an extremely long time ago, but I remember having a pretty enjoyable experience. I didn't have any prior connection to the original two Dooms. With that in mind, between 2 and 3, there's an over 10-year gap, and you have to expect some kind of change. What a lot of people weren't expecting is the return to its root over 10 years later. Once again, shaking things up, id Software, now published by Bethesda, would once again bring Doom into the mainstream by taking it back to its roots with an amazing facelift added. Over-the-top action, lots of gore, amazing weapons, and fun levels to jump around in, it felt like Doom was finally back the way it was supposed to be. It's something I really feel the community deserved, something I didn't cover were the many mods made for the original Dooms over the years. Even after over 15 years, Doom was still loved by so many. Doom 2016 was set to blow expectations out of the water for the new age of Doom. Before Doom 2016 though, there was a lot of development on a game called Doom 4. Doom 4, surprisingly enough, would have been the 4th installment into the series that would send the player back to Earth like in the second Doom. With what limited gameplay we have, this build feels heavily inspired by games that aren't Doom. I see a little Resistance Fall of Man in there mixed with a little bit of Call of Duty. The major point that set it apart was going to be the focus on gore, but that never came through. I feel like Doom 3 almost set the franchise down a similar path that the Resident Evil franchise went down, where one game does well enough to set the entire franchise away from its own identity. Sure, you might have some familiar enemies and maybe some corporations make reappearances, but at the end of the day, Doom 4 probably would have strayed the franchise even farther away from its roots. Whoever made the call to scrap this build, probably after being in development hell for years, ended up making probably the best call for the franchise. Doom 2016 would get its first official announcement in 2014. Almost immediately, a large amount of hype was building around this game. The first full reveal would come in 2015 at Bethesda's E3 showcase, and I just love the opening shot of Doom Guy putting on the helmet. Its only purpose is to show you that this is Doom. This is really Doom this time. Very quickly it moves to a section where Doom Guy clears a room full of demons. The gore aspect from Doom 4 made it here, as well as takedowns are a way to finish enemies in a bloody mess. The showcase did exactly what it needed to. It was just Doom all over again. Doom would finally release a year later, and it was just about everything everyone wanted. Intense music playing over incredibly fast sections where movement and aim had to be spot on to clear a section of demons. id Software not only brought Doom back, they did it in a way that everyone wanted to see it. Doom 2016 would go on to receive massive praise from critics and players alike. Old school players of the franchise loved it, and newcomers loved it as well. It would even do so well that id Software would announce a sequel for Doom 2016. Called Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal would even crush the previous Dooms with reviews and sales. Once id found their footing with a recipe not only they liked but the audience did as well, it was certain that the game would do well. The fast-paced movement filled with the gore and demons felt like a perfect reimagining of the classic games. Although where Doom in 1994 not only revolutionized the FPS genre, but online play, Doom 2016 would fall a bit short. Doom 2016 would launch with multiplayer in an already competitive market. Doom would keep the arena shooter formula but try to bring it into present day as multiple game series were tweaking and working on it up to this point. Unreal Tournament, Quake, and even the Halo series are part of the greatest arena shooters to date. On the other hand, you have massive franchises like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Counter-Strike popularizing a different form of FPS genre. And to add just a little bit of sprinkles onto this FPS genre Sunday, Overwatch would come out the same year and launch the hero-based format even more into the mainstream. While Doom wouldn't just copy its classic arena shooter playstyle, it would now face massive amounts of competition. When Doom 1 and Doom 2 were getting popular, they were essentially one of a kind. If you wanted to play an online shooter, you basically just had Doom. In 2016, the larger pool of shooters would have a whole different stage for the Doom franchise. With the franchise already on a next level comeback with the single player campaign, it would be understandable if multiplayer lacked a little bit. Doom 2016 would launch with 6 different game modes: TDM, Soul Harvester, which is just a variation of TDM where you must pick up the soul of a fallen enemy to earn a point; Clan Arena, a single life 6v6 mode; Freeze Tag, where you unfreeze fallen allies by standing next to them; Domination, a 3-point capture and hold game mode; and of course a King of the Hill type game mode where the hill actually moves around the map as the match plays on. Overall, there are 6 different game modes with a good amount of variety. Later on, as the game lost a little bit of the player count, the lesser game modes would get put into sort of a mega playlist, making it a bit harder to play a specific game mode if that's the specific one you wanted to play at that moment. Doom offered a good variety while still offering a great arena shooter feel, mainly thanks to the maps being well made and the variety of guns to keep class building interesting. It kept the pickups around the map. Health, armor, better weapons would make a reappearance, while a new drop would be added. Players could now pick up an item called the Demon Room. Depending on what demon was selected in the player's class, you had up to 10 demons depending on if you had a DLC or not, or if you're using a snap map type editor. Also, I did say classes, and that's one thing this Doom would try to set itself apart with than the previous Doom installments. Players now had the ability to select 2 guns and choose what demon room they wanted before going into a match. It was a good way to change up your playstyle throughout the game while still having better weapons be able to be picked up on the map during the actual playtime. Now going back to SnapMap, SnapMap is actually a creation tool included in Doom. The editor is extremely easy to use, and I've always been one to advocate for some sort of map creation tool inside of games. Probably thanks to TimeSplitters 2 all the way back in the day having one. But this one actually does feel a lot like TimeSplitters having the grid type system. You could create multiplayer maps or a very short and simple single player type of experience. From what I could tell, it could have been executed a little bit better, but it was nice just to have some sort of map creation tool inside of the game. So we have covered everything around the multiplayer: the guns, maps, modes, and even the pickups in the game. Let's actually jump in and see how true it feels to the arena shooter genre. Overall, with the pickups around the map, you get a very familiar feel to the classics. Very quickly learning spawns and quick map layouts is extremely important in this game. A little less because there are actually markers to point you the direction on which you go, but still pretty important. If you want to stay alive long in this game, you have to keep your movement quick. But like I said, the biggest change had to be the class system. As the class system kind of dies out nowadays with a slightly more favored hero shooter genre, I love any instance where I can customize my own setup. Being able to swap from a longer range class to a close quarter shotgun combo while having my own perks is definitely my preferred way to play an online shooter. The multiplayer was extremely fast paced, just like the single player, and overall got a good reception at release. Playing it back in the day, it was a lot of fun, and I almost had no issues finding servers for a good amount of time. With such a boom thanks to the popularity from the campaign being so good, it was a very positive release for multiplayer. The fast-paced arena shooter felt like it made a full-on comeback with this multiplayer. But as we try to look ahead from release, there are already some major problems on the horizon. What we're going to find out very quickly is Doom didn't hold a big player base for very long. There are forum posts all the way back in 2017, only a year after the launch, stating having trouble finding any online games, with some users reporting having issues only a few months after the game's release. So exactly what pulled players away so fast? I have a few ideas on why players fled so quickly. Like I stated before, a lot of other franchises seem to be floating around this time. Overwatch was extremely hyped up to this point and released the same year and had a completely multiplayer focus with an even wider variety of characters, modes, and maps. For some wanting to jump on a new multiplayer game to ride out, Overwatch was a clear winner. I was someone who jumped in and out of Doom multiplayer when I wanted to take breaks from my main game at the time, CSGO. And the only reason why I jumped in and out of it so much is because it was just too different to what I was used to. And personally, that's just kinda how I feel a lot of other people felt at the time. I already had my go-to multiplayer experience whenever I wanted to jump on. Counter-Strike is a very slow-paced game with some occasional big build-ups around certain parts of the map. Doom is almost the exact opposite of that. It's extremely fast-paced and relies a lot on pickups to determine the pace of the game. Sure, there's still the aiming concept, but for a lot of other guns, they shoot projectiles instead of hit scans, which is what I was very much familiar with at the time. So Doom was fun to jump in and out of to maybe let off some steam after I got extremely mad at Counter-Strike. But I just never took it seriously or sat down to play it for more than a couple games at a time. Breaking into the multiplayer field isn't easy even for a AAA developer, and I think Doom fell victim to that. It was different enough to feel new and original, but just too close to other FPS games at the time. Even Bethesda would announce a new Quake game, basically trying to pull any player who wanted an arena shooter away from Doom to Quake. With Quake, you now have a fully dedicated multiplayer-focused arena shooter based on a franchise that had been a bit more consistent over the years. Doom's multiplayer wasn't bad or unenjoyable by any stretch of the imagination. It just got into an already incredibly competitive field where a lot of players were already set in their ways. One thing they did right was have a bot mode, which is how I was actually able to get any gameplay for this video. I actually am extremely thankful that they have this because without it, I wouldn't have even gotten a feel of what this game was like nowadays. Because the servers are completely dead, but at least with the bots I can get a feel of what the multiplayer was like when it was active. And that's kind of it for Doom's 2016 multiplayer. There wasn't some big update that ruined the game or a mass fan base upset over the game. It was just a slow sizzle. There's no way I would have been able to find an online game, but thankfully, like I said, to the bots, I was able to fight something and get some sort of feel of what the game was like. But with that being said, it's pretty easy to say this game's completely empty. I enjoyed my time back in the day with it, and these bot matches were still fast and enjoyable. I definitely could see this game lasting a bit longer if it came out at a different time, but it would have to do a lot to stay relevant in today's atmosphere. With free-to-play games being wildly successful and multiplayer games getting consistent updates, if you're not one of those two, you're going to fall behind very quick. With the single player being so well done though, I don't think anyone was too upset when this multiplayer faded away. On top of that, it gave a great announcement to AAA devs that not only were FPS single player games wanted at this point, but could do very well. And that's kind of it for Doom 2016's multiplayer. Let me know if you guys played this one back in the day. I played it a bit on PC and PS4, and I did really enjoy my time with it. But back in the day, 2015, 2016, 2017, there was just about nothing that would have pulled me away from Counter-Strike. Lastly, I want to give one last shout out to Combine for recommending this video. It's taken me a long time to compile this information and get this one written down. Had a lot of IRL stuff going on that I had to take care of that was more important. But this was a perfect game to cover, and again, I just really appreciate the recommendation. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and if you guys have any other games with multiplayer franchises that are maybe in that weird stage of dying or already dead, and you'd like to see me cover them, let me know. I have a few more in the works. This one was a fun one. I'll see you next time.